4 words on my phone screen. That's all it took. Don't come to the wedding. I stared at those words while holding a receipt in my other hand, the final payment for my sister's dream wedding. $100,000. That's what I'd spent over 6 months. The venue she cried happy tears over. The imported flowers she'd been obsessing about since high school. The 12-piece band. Every single detail of a day I thought would finally make me matter to her. But here's the thing, that text wasn't what destroyed me. What came after, that's what changed everything. My mother's phone call with her careful explanations. The planner's sudden silence. And then the discovery I made at 2 in the morning, buried in contracts I'd signed months ago. A discovery that gave me power I didn't know I had. And when I used it, none of them saw it coming. My name is Kate Preston. For most of my life, I've been the person everyone counted on to handle things. Not because they loved me or appreciated me, no, it was more like assigning chores to the kid who won't complain. Growing up in Spokane, I learned fast that in my family, being calm wasn't a personality trait. It was a requirement. My mother Carol used to call me steady. The kind of daughter who didn't need checking on. My little sister Chloe was the opposite. Sensitive, fragile, easily overwhelmed. That word, fragile, got thrown around constantly, like she was made of thin glass and I was just the towel they wrapped around her for protection. While Chloe was being comforted and soothed and protected from anything remotely uncomfortable, I was the one walking myself to elementary school, filling out my own field trip forms. Cooking canned beans in the microwave for dinner because Mom was driving Chloe to another art class she'd quit 2 weeks later. I remember one time in middle school, I got sick, actually sick, fever and everything. I called Mom from the nurse's office, and she said she'd come get me. 2 hours later, I was still sitting there because Chloe had called her crying about some girl at school who looked at her wrong. Mom picked Chloe up first, took her for ice cream to calm her down, and got to me 3 hours after school ended. The nurse had stayed late, looking at me with this mixture of pity and confusion. I never said anything about it. What was the point? Dad, Paul, loved us both, I think, but he stayed completely out of anything emotional. If Mom made a decision, he backed it by staying silent. That was his version of, don't ask me to pick sides. I used to wonder what would happen if just once, he spoke up for me. But he never did. By the time I hit adulthood, the pattern was cemented in concrete. Chloe didn't just expect help, she existed in a world where help would always magically arrive. And I existed in the world next door, where needing anything made you an inconvenience. So when she got engaged to Ryan, tall, smooth-talking, good-on-paper Ryan, I wasn't surprised when my mother called me that same night. She didn't ask how I was doing or how work at the healthcare firm was going. She went straight to it. Kate, Chloe's dream wedding is finally happening. She wants something beautiful. And you're so good at managing things. That phrase. So good at managing things. That's what my entire life had been reduced to, a skill set they could tap into whenever they needed something. That was the beginning. 6 months of invoices, deposits, design calls, mood boards, endless emails from vendors, and draft after draft from the wedding planner. I paid for the dress fitting where Chloe cried tears of joy. The ballroom she circled on her phone, whispering, this is it. Those imported flowers she said she'd always imagined holding. I remember the day we went dress shopping. Chloe had insisted I come along, said she needed me there. I took the day off work, drove 3 hours to Spokane. She tried on maybe 15 dresses while Mom and her friends cooed and cried. When she finally found the one, a custom designer piece that cost more than my monthly rent, she turned to me with tears streaming down her face. Will you get this for me? She asked. Not, can you help? Not, would you mind? Just an assumption that I would. I said yes. Because that's what I always did. Every bill, every payment passed across my laptop in my Seattle apartment. Those warm kitchen lights, my coffee getting cold while I approved another expense. And I believed it was worth it. I genuinely believed I was finally doing something that mattered to someone who never really saw me. I even took extra shifts at work to cover some of the costs. My boss noticed I looked tired, asked if everything was okay. I told him I was helping with my sister's wedding, and he smiled like that was the most natural thing in the world. That's what family does, he said. Yeah. That's what family does. But then something shifted. So small at first it almost felt accidental. Almost. It started with tiny things. Things so small that if I mentioned them out loud, I'd sound paranoid. The planner forgetting to CC me on a call. A florist asking Chloe for final approval even though I'd been the one paying every single invoice. A band coordinator emailing her directly instead of me. At first, I brushed it off. People get busy. Mistakes happen, right? But then there was Carolyn, Ryan's mother. We met once on a video call about the rehearsal dinner. She smiled politely, but her eyes kept sharpening whenever I spoke. Like she was trying to figure out where exactly I fit in all this. At one point, she said, "We want the ceremony to feel peaceful. Simple. No stress." She paused on the word peaceful like it was aimed directly at me, not at the logistics. I didn't understand what that meant then. Later, it became painfully, humiliatingly clear. About a week after that call, I noticed the wedding planner wasn't updating the shared folder anymore. The documents were still there, but any new decisions were happening somewhere else. Somewhere I wasn't invited. I emailed her twice, short, neutral messages. She responded once, saying, "We'll keep Chloe closely looped in." Closely looped in. As if Chloe had suddenly become the project manager of a wedding she couldn't afford. Then the questions stopped coming to me altogether. Chloe started acting strange too. Short texts. Delayed replies. No more excited voice memos about tablecloth colors or dessert options. One afternoon, I called to ask if she wanted help reviewing seating charts, something she'd literally begged me to do the week before. She sighed. "Let me think about it," then hung up without waiting for my response. For someone who used to call me crying about a chipped nail, it felt like whiplash. I tried bringing it up once. Called Mom and said, "Is everything okay with Chloe? She seems distant." Mom laughed it off. "She's just busy with wedding planning, Kate. You know how stressful it is." The irony of that statement, considering I was the one doing all the actual planning and paying for it, wasn't lost on me. But the real shift came the week before the wedding. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Seattle, going through payments for the final installments, when Chloe's name lit up my phone. I smiled, expecting a thank you. Maybe a last-minute request about flowers or music. Instead, it was a text so blunt it didn't feel real. "Don't come to the wedding." I read it 3 times. Waiting for context. An apology. A joke. A follow-up message saying her phone got hacked. Nothing came. I called her. She didn't answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. Finally, I texted back. "What's going on?" 3 dots appeared. Then vanished. Reappeared. Vanished again. 20 minutes later, Mom called instead. "Kate," she said softly, using that tone she always used when she needed something from me. "Don't take it personally. Carolyn wants to avoid tension. You know how you can be, too direct. Chloe wants everything to go smoothly." I felt heat rising up my neck. My hands were shaking. "I paid for everything." "You're the strong one," Mom replied, like that explained it. Like that made it okay. "You understand, right?" There it was. That sentence. The one they've been using my entire life to excuse everything. "What about what I want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Kate, don't be dramatic. This is Chloe's special day." Dramatic. I'd just been uninvited from a wedding I'd funded completely, and I was being dramatic. I hung up before she finished talking. For the rest of that night, I sat in my dim kitchen, staring at the contracts open on my laptop. I should have felt heartbroken, furious, humiliated. Instead, I felt something sharper, clarity. Because as I traced the lines of those documents, one detail stood out. Pulsing like a beacon I'd never noticed before. Every contract. Every agreement. Every payment. All of it was under one name. Mine. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my kitchen with only the glow of my laptop and the steady Seattle rain tapping against the window. The wedding contracts were spread across my screen. Payments, bills, emails, timelines. I'd seen them 100 times before. But never like this. Never with the understanding that I'd been erased from an event I had built from the ground up. My hands were steady. Too steady. I clicked open the venue agreement first. Scanned down the text I'd skimmed over months ago when I was excited to help. And there it was, bold and almost smug in its simplicity. Primary signer, Kate Preston. Cancellation rights reserved exclusively for the signer. I leaned back in my chair. A cold calm settled over me, thicker than anger, heavier than hurt. It wasn't rage. It was recognition of power I didn't know I still had. My phone buzzed on the counter. Mom again. I let it ring. I opened the catering agreement. Same thing. Signer, me. The florist contract. Me. The band. Me. The decor team, the transport service, the photo booth. Me. In every document, every place Chloe had dreamed of walking through in white, the only person with actual authority wasn't her. It was me. My pulse finally picked up, not from fear, but from something close to awakening. I thought about all those years. All those moments where I'd swallowed my feelings, my needs, my voice. Every time I'd been told I was strong enough to handle being overlooked. Every time my pain was dismissed because Chloe's feelings were always more important. I thought about the time I got into my top choice college and Mom barely reacted because Chloe was having a bad day. Or when I got promoted at work and couldn't even share the news at dinner because Chloe was stressed about a date. My whole life had been background music to Chloe's main event. Not anymore. At 12:47 a.m., I opened a new email. Hello, Jennifer, I typed to the venue coordinator. As the signer on this event, I'm formally requesting cancellation effective immediately. I paused for half a second, breathed, and hit send. One email, then another, then another. To every vendor, every coordinator, every contact who had ever called me such a responsible sister. The replies came quicker than I expected. Received. Understood. We'll process the refund according to policy. Thank you for the notice, Kate. No questions. No hesitation. Because I wasn't asking. I was exercising the authority they'd always assumed I'd never use. Around 2 a.m, I made my first phone call, to the Evergreen Catering. The manager, David, who had spent weeks perfecting Chloe's dream menu, answered sounding half asleep. Kate. Everything all right? I'm canceling, I said simply. I'm the signer. Please proceed under the contract terms. He exhaled slowly. I figured something like this might happen. We'll take care of it. His response surprised me. You figured. Look, he said quietly, I've been doing this 20 years. I've seen a lot of weddings. And I've seen a lot of families. When someone's paying for everything but getting left out of decisions, it usually doesn't end well. I'm sorry it came to this. That small moment of validation from a stranger hit harder than I expected. Next was the florist. Then the band. Then the transport team. Every call was the same. Calm voices, quiet acknowledgments, the soft hum of professionals who had seen this kind of implosion before. By 3:30 a.m., my inbox was full of confirmations. The wedding, piece by piece, was collapsing. Silently. Efficiently. Exactly the way it had been built. Around dawn, I closed my laptop. The sky outside was pale silver, the kind Seattle only shows after a long night. I stood up, stretched, and poured myself a fresh cup of coffee. For the first time in years, my chest didn't feel tight. They told me not to come to the wedding. Fine. I wasn't coming. I was taking the wedding with me. The morning after I canceled everything, my phone looked like it was melting. Missed calls stacked to the edge of the screen. Voicemails piling up behind them. I didn't listen to a single one. Instead, I made breakfast the same way I always did, eggs, toast, black coffee. The kind of quiet routine that steadied me more than any apology they could deliver. Around noon, the first real domino fell. A message from the venue coordinator lit up my phone. Chloe and her family arrived asking to restore the booking. We informed them the signer must authorize changes. I imagined it perfectly. My mother's smile tightening. Chloe's eyes widening. Carolyn stepping forward like she could out-negotiate policy. Another email followed minutes later. They're upset. We're following procedure. I set the phone face down. By 3 p.m., the text shifted from confusion to full panic. Kate, call me now. Why would you sabotage the wedding? This is humiliating. You're acting unstable. Unstable. The word they always used when they didn't want to face what they'd done. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and compiled everything, emails, receipts, payments, cancellations, into a single folder labeled Records. Evidence, not conversation. At 9 p.m., the doorbell rang. No one visited me unannounced. Ever. I checked the peephole. Chloe. She looked nothing like the curated version of herself she'd shown the world for years. Her hair was frizzy. Her mascara smudged. Her sweater stretched at the sleeves. She wasn't crying yet, but the pressure was right there, collecting at the edges. "Kate," she whispered when I opened the door. "Please. Let me in." I stepped aside. What else was I going to do? Slam the door in her face? Part of me wanted to, but I wasn't them. She sat on the very edge of my couch, elbows on her knees, clutching her phone like it was the last thing tethering her to anything stable. "Why did you do this?" she asked. I kept my voice even. "You told me not to come." She shook her head. "It wasn't meant literally." "Texts are literal," I said. She looked down. I was stressed. "Carolyn said it might be calmer if you weren't there. She thinks you're too intense." I couldn't help the small laugh that escaped. "Intense. Carolyn hasn't seen intense." Chloe twisted her fingers together. "I didn't think you'd react like this." "How did you think I'd react?" I asked. "After paying for everything." She didn't answer. Finally, she murmured, "Mom said you wouldn't mind. You're strong. You understand." That sentence again. The one they weaponized against me my entire life. I stood up. "I canceled because I was the signer. Because I was removed. Because you expected my money without inviting me." Her chin trembled. "We need the wedding back. They said it can't go forward without you. The venue actually told us to contact the signer. They made us wait in the lobby like we were intruding." I nodded once. "You were." She blinked hard. "Kate, please. Just sign it again. Put it back. Ryan's family is furious. His parents are threatening to pull out entirely. Everyone's already traveling here. The bridesmaids have their dresses. We sent out 200 invitations. And my invitation?" I asked quietly. "Where was that?" She had no answer for that. The doorbell rang again, 3 sharp presses. Chloe flinched. I opened it. Mom stepped inside before I could say a word, face tight with anger and desperation. Behind her stood Carolyn, perfectly composed except for the stiff posture of someone scrambling to maintain control. Mom started first. "Kate Preston, what is the meaning of this?" I folded my arms. "The meaning of what?" "Canceling the wedding," she snapped. "You're embarrassing us." "You erased me first," I said. Mom waved her hand dismissively. "We did what we had to do to keep things peaceful." "You broke the peace," I replied. "You removed me from the wedding I paid for." Carolyn stepped forward, voice clipped and precise. "We needed a harmonious environment. You complicate things." I stared at her. "This is me calm. Completely calm." She faltered but recovered. "Your behavior proves our concern." "My behavior?" I repeated. "I sent polite cancellations. Meanwhile, you told people I was having a breakdown." Carolyn looked away. Mom didn't. Mom crossed her arms. "Fix this, Kate. Think about your sister. Think about the family." "I've spent my whole life thinking about the family," I said. "About Chloe. About what everyone else needs. When does someone think about me?" "This is selfish," Mom said. "Yeah," I replied. "Maybe it is. Maybe I've earned the right to be selfish for once." Chloe's voice broke through. "Please. The venue said you're the only one who can authorize the reinstatement. They said we'd have to ask you." Her voice cracked on the word ask. She wasn't used to asking me for anything besides money. "Then ask," I said quietly. "Ask properly." She swallowed hard. "Kate, please sign it back." "No." Her knees buckled. She sank into the couch. Mom gasped softly. Carolyn stiffened like someone had slapped her. "Why?" Chloe whispered. "Why are you doing this to me?" "I'm not doing anything to you," I said. "I'm doing something for myself." Silence swelled in the room, thick and suffocating. Then I delivered it, the final line I'd only rehearsed in my mind. You removed me from your wedding. So I removed your wedding from my name. Mom's breath hitched. Carolyn turned pale. Chloe covered her mouth, eyes wide and shattered. You can't be serious, Carolyn said. This is childish. Childish is uninviting someone who paid for your son's entire wedding, I said. Childish is deciding I was too intense after you took my money. I'm not being childish. I'm being clear. No more calls, I added. No more texts. No more using my strength as your excuse. Mom reached for me, but I stepped back. Please leave. They stared at me, waiting for the familiar softening. The surrender they'd seen my entire life. It didn't come. Eventually, they filed out, stunned, defeated, scrambling for a new version of the story to tell everyone else. When the door clicked shut, I exhaled. Not in triumph. Just release. A life finally returned to its rightful owner. In the days that followed, chaos spun around the cancelled wedding louder than anything I'd ever experienced. But my own world. It grew strangely quiet. My Seattle apartment felt different. Lighter. Like removing myself from their expectations had finally opened a window I didn't know was sealed shut. Vendors kept sending confirmation emails. Refunds processing. Accounts closed. Balances finalized. Every line affirmed one thing. I had acted within my rights. No drama. No breakdown. Just a woman reclaiming what she'd given away too easily. My mother tried calling for a week straight. I didn't pick up. Each voicemail sounded less angry and more confused, like she couldn't understand how the daughter who never pushed back had suddenly learned how. Dad called once. Just once. He didn't yell. He just said, I don't understand why you did this, Kate. But I hope you know what you're doing. Then he hung up. It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd ever given me before, acknowledgement that I'd made a choice, even if he didn't agree with it. Where noise used to be, I found space. I started therapy again, returning to Dr. Christine's warm office with its quiet clock and soft lighting. For the first time, I didn't talk about Chloe or my mother. I talked about myself. What I wanted. What I no longer needed to prove. It felt unfamiliar, but good. Like stepping into a room built just for me. Dr. Christine asked me once, do you feel guilty? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said. I feel free. I also joined a Women in Tech mentorship circle. Wednesday nights became the highlight of my week. Women who spoke plainly, asked directly, and didn't punish each other for having boundaries. I learned how to say no without apologizing. I learned how to ask for things without shrinking. One woman, Lauren, told me about a similar situation with her brother. How she'd always been the one everyone leaned on until she finally broke. The hardest part, she said, was realizing they didn't love me less when I stopped giving. They just had to learn to see me differently. That hit home. And for the first time in my life, I started choosing myself, not out of anger, but out of clarity. A month later, on a quiet Sunday morning, I walked along Lake Union with a cup of black coffee and realized something simple but new. My life finally felt like mine. Not borrowed. Not demanded. Not shaped around someone else's emergencies. Mine. Chloe eventually sent a letter, not asking for money, not asking for the wedding back, just acknowledging what she'd broken and what she couldn't undo. She wrote that she'd postponed everything, that she and Ryan were rethinking what they actually wanted, that she was sorry, that she didn't realize how much she'd taken from me until there was nothing left to take. I didn't rush to forgive her. Some things need time, space, and honesty before they can be rebuilt. But for once, the choice was mine to make, not an obligation pressed into my hands. And that's the point, isn't it? Boundaries aren't punishments. They're doors you close so peace has somewhere to stay. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about family, boundaries, and finding the courage to put yourself first. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who only value what you give, not who you are.